Suspense. This is the Man in Black, here again to introduce Columbia's program, Suspense. With us in Hollywood tonight as star is Mr. Otto Kruger, whose career on the screen and on the stage has afforded him a precisely equal number of appearances as a character on the right and on the wrong side of the law. Whether the man Mr. Kruger portrays tonight is devil or saint, we shall leave for you to judge when the play is over. It is called After Dinner Story. The author is Cornell Woolrich, the radio adapter Robert L. Richards. And so, with the performance of Otto Kruger as Mr. Hardecker, who told this extraordinary after-dinner story, we again hope to keep you in suspense.
Mr. Hardecker's residence? I believe I'm expected for dinner, please.
Your name, sir?
Kenshaw is my name.
Very good, sir. Mr. Hardecker? Mr. Kenshaw, sir.
Ah, number one. Good evening, Mr. Kenshaw.
Is this where Mr. Hardecker lives? My name is Lambert.
Mr. Hardecker? Mr. Lambert.
Number two.
My name is Prendergast. I think
Mr. Hardecker? Mr. Prendergast.
Number three.
Mackenzie's the name.
Mr. Hardecker? Mr. Mackenzie.
Number four. One, two, three, four. So you're all here, gentlemen?
Yes.
Then suppose we go into dinner, and after dinner I shall tell you why you are here, what I have in mind. In fact, I shall tell you in the form of a story, a sort of after-dinner story.
All right. That's a great cup of coffee. I enjoyed it very much.
You pass that, please.
Well, gentlemen, did you enjoy your dinner?
Yeah, it was swell.
Then, if you'll excuse me for just a moment, I have certain instructions to give the servants, and after that I shall rejoin you. I shan't be long.
Certainly.
Well, what did that crack mean? Certain instructions to the servants.
How should I know?
I don't like the looks of the whole thing. Why all the mystery?
Well, I suggest that you have patience, Mr. Prendergast. Mr. Hardecker clearly intends to tell us in his own good time.
Yeah. And another thing. I don't eat in those fancy Park Avenue joints as a rule myself, but I've seen them in the movies. They always pass the food around to everybody. They don't bring it out of the kitchen already on your plate and just hand it to you.
Well, what possible difference can that make?
Well, I don't know, but I know it ain't right.
No. None of it's right. Why does the man invite four perfect strangers to dinner? What is this thing he has in mind for us he keeps talking about?
Well, all I know, he says he'll make it worth our while, and I can use a little of that worth your while stuff the way business has been lately.
Obviously, the connection between us is that we were all in that elevator a year ago.
Oh, what of it? There's no mystery about that. The police cleared that up the very next day.
Maybe Mr. Hardecker doesn't think so.
Sorry to have kept you, gentlemen. Now, suppose we get down to business.
Mr. Hardecker, none of us wish to seem rude, but we were just wondering what this business is all about.
You had come to the obvious conclusion, of course, that it has to do with my son.
Well, yeah.
I don't see why we're all sorry, naturally, but that's all over and done with.
Yes,
And
almost. But there are one or two little details that I thought you gentlemen might help me to clarify.
Oh, well.
Fine. Well, then, if you don't mind, I know you must remember most of it, but it's almost a year ago. I'd like to go over the whole story from the beginning.
Well, that's all right.
Well, it was just before 5 in the afternoon on August 30th of last year when the matter which concerns us here this evening had its beginning. And on that day, and at that time, all four of you, perfect strangers, who had never seen each other before in your lives, found yourselves, for personal and business reasons of your own, on various floors of the Norfolk building in Midtown Manhattan. waiting for the express elevator to take you to the lobby. The first passengers were on the 21st floor.
21, going down, please. Express car, going down.
There are now 3 men in the elevator. The operator, Mr. Kenshaw and Mr. Lambert, who had gotten on at the 21st floor.
18, going down, please. Face the doors, please. Going down.
Now there are 5 men in the car. Mr. Prendergast and Mr. Mackenzie had entered the elevator at the 18th floor.
15, express car to the lobby. Going down, please.
Say hello to Eleanor for me.
You bet. Bye, Dad.
Bye.
6 men in the elevator. The last to enter, I had accompanied to the elevator door myself. He was my son.
These things drop pretty fast.
Too fast for me.
Hey, this baby is moving.
Hey, look!
We can't stop it.
We're out of control. Stop it. Look out, we're going to hit.
Get off. Stop it. Try
Anybody got a match?
I think my leg's broken.
Get me out of here. I got a wife and kids. Somebody get me out of here. Get me out
Shut
of
up
here.
a minute, can't you?
So dark.
You're not the only one with a wife and kids. Has anybody got a match? We've got to get this door open.
Yeah. I don't have it.
We're liable to suffocate in here. These things are practically airtight. Where's the operator?
Operator, he's over here. I can feel the braid on his coat against my hand.
Oh. Hey, what about it, Bud? You've got a match so I can see what I'm doing here? Hey, operator.
He's dead.
Dead? Why doesn't somebody come? What's the matter with him? Why don't they come?
Pipe down, will you? Pipe down. There, I got it. Now we'll get a little air anyway. Oh, there's a light up there somewhere. Yeah, I can hear voices. Yeah, you hear them?
Help! Help!
Say, there's no use getting your head off. They know we're down here. Yeah.
I wish my leg didn't hurt so bad.
Oh, let's see. Try wrapping your shirt around it tight. May stop some of the pain.
Thanks.
Yeah, easy.
Now what?
Nothing. Just sit and wait. That's all.
Why don't they hurry? What are they waiting for? Why don't they hurry?
Take it easy. Take it easy. You could be worse off.
Worse off?
Yeah. Like this poor guy, the operator. He's dead.
And so you waited. 6 men, 5 living, 1 dead. I know how it must have been for all of you, the minutes dragging by, there in the darkness, with nothing to do but wait.
How's your leg?
Better. How long do you suppose we've been down here?
No, it's hard to tell.
Maybe they think we're all dead. Maybe they're just taking their time.
Don't worry. They heard you hollering all right.
Gee, the poor guy. I wonder if he had any kids.
The operator? Yeah.
I often wondered sometimes what would happen if one of these things ever slipped.
Well, now you know. I'll never ride in one again.
So he's going to walk up 68 stories to the Rainbow Room.
I don't go to the Rainbow Room.
Oh, I'm certainly glad my father didn't get on this car with me. He was going to, but he changed his mind.
Wish I'd changed my mind. You know, if I hadn't gone back to make a phone call, I'd have been on another car.
What's the use of wishing?
Okay.
It's happened, and here we are.
Listen, there they are up there.
They're going to get us out.
Yeah.
Hello! Hello up there!
Yeah, we're coming to you. Take it easy.
Hurry, can't you? Hurry! Hurry!
We'll hurry. Anybody hurry?
Yeah, one guy's dead.
We'll be through to you in a minute. Okay, Ronnie, let her down now.
Look at that light up
A
there.
settling torches.
Yeah, they're gonna cut a hole in the roof.
What a racket.
Oh, I'm nearly deaf already.
Listen, you guys. We're coming through, see? Watch out for sparks. Shut your eyes and stand back against the wall.
Okay.
I never knew those things made so much noise.
It's because we're close in.
No! What was that?
I don't know.
I thought I heard somebody holler.
Yeah, so did I.
Must have been one of those guys up above.
Those sparks are enough to blind you.
Well, don't look at them. They will blind you.
One went right by in front of my face, right across the car.
They couldn't have. They're dropping down.
Did you see it? It was awful bright.
Oh, just a reflection. Don't look at it.
I guess they got it cut through.
Phew, yeah. I couldn't have stood much more of that.
They're pulling off the top. It won't be long now.
All right. Stand clear down there. I'm going to jump down.
Hey, cop.
And no cop ever looked lovelier.
All right. Pass them ropes down now. Okay, hold it. All right. Who's first now? Who's the worst hurt of you all? How about this fella?
Now, that's the operator. He's dead.
Hey, look. Those other two guys have both passed out.
Yeah, shock, I guess.
Officer, I've got to get out of here. I feel pretty bad.
Hey, hold your horses. There's nothing wrong with you.
But
That man's got a broken leg there.
Who's got a broken leg?
I have, I think.
All right. Can you sit in this rope sling here?
I'll try.
Now, hang on with both your hands.
I'll be all right.
Okay. Pull him up.
Well, so long, fellas.
Take care of that leg.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. My name's Lambert.
And mine's Mackenzie. Maybe we'll run into each other sometime.
Yeah. Well, so long.
All right, let me have that rope now. Well, who's next now?
Well, maybe you better take those two guys that passed out. They might be hurt.
Why, sure. How about this young fella?
Sure. He got a little blood on him, hasn't he?
He has that.
glass from the light fixtures, I guess.
Well, I don't think it's serious.
You don't, eh?
No, he seemed to be all right.
Well, whatever he seemed to be, he's not now. This man is dead.
Dead? Oh, but he can't be.
Look here, my lad, you don't seem to realize that you've come through a pretty serious accident.
I know, but he can't be dead. We heard him talking just a few minutes ago. Isn't that right?
Yes, I heard him.
Well, sure. He was talking to us here in the dock. He said something about being glad his father wasn't on this elevator.
I can't help what he said or what you heard him say. This man is dead.
My son, who had survived the original accident without apparent injury, was dead. You gentlemen were more fortunate. You lived. 5 days later, you four met again. It was at police headquarters. About 2:30 on a Friday afternoon. The last to arrive was Mr. Lambert.
In here, Mr. Lambert.
Thanks.
Hello there.
Hi, fella.
Hey, how's the leg?
Pretty good.
Mr. Lambert,
That's right.
I'm Chief Inspector McMahon.
How'd do?
You'll just take a seat there.
Yes, sir.
Well, we all here now. Mr. Kenshaw, Mr. Prendergast, Mr.
Yes?
McKenzie,
That's me.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes, sir.
Well, now, as I told each of you over the phone, I won't keep you very long. I just wanted to ask a few routine questions about that business of the elevator the other day.
Well, what's the matter? Something phony about it?
Not for our money. It's an open and shut case. Suicide.
Suicide?
Yeah. You mean the operator wanted to bump himself off so he could...
No, not the operator. He died of a fractured skull. It's young Hardiker we're interested in. His father's been raising a row, so we said we'd investigate, but...
I still don't get it.
Wesley Hardiker was killed by a .32 caliber bullet through the heart.
What?
You couldn't have him. You mean he killed himself right in that car with all of us?
What else?
The-
He wasn't shot when he walked in, and he was dead when we brought him out. Unless one of you killed him.
Oh, no.
Well, now.
Any of you know him?
No.
Well, then there you are. Even the father had to admit that as far as he knew, his son had never seen any of you before in his life.
But it don't make sense.
What don't make sense?
Well, I mean, a guy shooting himself in an elevator with four other people that nobody didn't even know it.
Did any of you hear the shot?
Well, not before they started the blowtorches. I could swear to that. You couldn't have heard one anyway.
Yeah, you see.
Hey, wait a minute.
Did you hear something?
No. But Mackenzie, remember I said when I was laying on the floor of the elevator, that I thought I saw a spark from one of those blowtorches that went across the car instead of falling down?
That's right.
Anybody else see it?
The blowtorches were absolutely blinding. You couldn't see a...
How about you, Mr. Kenshaw?
I'm afraid that I fainted or something silly like that. I'm not a very strong person.
Well, it was probably the gunshot, all right. Nothing very mysterious about it. The gun belonged to young Hardiker, licensed in his name, and had only his own fingerprints on it.
Well, maybe I shouldn't ask, but why did he do it?
The official verdict is suicide while of unsound mind.
He seemed all right. He talked to us perfectly sensibly just before it happened.
Just goes to show. You never can tell, can you?
Oh, I'd always been nervous and highly strung. We got that out of his father. The strain of being down in that black pit was just too much for him, that's all.
Oh, but what a terrible thing. To break down just as we were about to be rescued.
Yeah, it's too bad. Boys seem to have everything to live for, too. But we find that sort of thing all the time.
The noise, I suppose. I've read of cases of nervous breakdown caused by noise.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I guess I don't need to keep you gentlemen any longer.
Well, I'm certainly glad there were no complications.
Oh, don't worry. If one of you had anything to do with it, you'd be back in the cell right now.
That was almost a year ago. Last week, each of you received a phone call from me. I can well understand and sympathize with the fact that you were somewhat astonished, perhaps a little suspicious of what you heard. I don't doubt that most of you debated at some length in your minds the advisability of accepting my invitation at all. You, for instance, Mr. Mackenzie, you are married, as I remember. I imagine that you talked quite seriously with your wife about the whole affair. I phoned your home, I believe, at about 8:30 last Monday evening.
Yes? This is Mr. Mackenzie speaking. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't seem to place you. Oh, of course, Mr. Hardiker. Well, frankly, I don't see the point. You don't know me, and I don't know you. Yeah? Yeah, I see. Well, all right, Mr. Hardiker. I'll be there. That's a funny name.
Who was it, dear?
His name is Hardiker. The father of that boy who killed himself in the elevator last year.
Oh? Well, what does he want?
He wants me to come to dinner with him on Saturday at his home.
Why, how lovely. He's a very important man, isn't he? Did he ask both of us?
No. As a matter of fact, he's asking the four men who were in that elevator with his son when he died.
Oh, what a strange idea. Seems sort of gruesome to me.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Didn't he say anything?
Oh, he said quite a lot.
Well, what did he say?
I was just thinking.
Oh, now, please, Stephen, don't sit there and be so tantalizing. What did he say?
Well, he said something about his son's estate. Seems his son had quite a lot of money in his own right. The old man said he didn't need it, and there weren't any other relations, and... Well, he sort of hinted that he thought it might be a good idea to split it up between the four men who were with his son in his last moments of life, as he put it.
Why, Stephen, how wonderful. Why, aren't you excited? How much is it? Do you suppose it's a lot of money?
I don't know.
Why, it might be several $1,000s. It might be several $100,000. Oh, Stephen, what's the matter with you?
Well, just such a crazy thing to do, that's all.
I don't see that makes any difference. If a man wants to do a nice, kind, generous thing...
Look, honey, if it was generosity, he'd give it to charity. If it was a sort of memorial to his son, he'd set up a scholarship or build a hospital or something.
Well...
The old man was pretty broken up about it when it happened. I remember reading something about his being in a sanitarium for a while afterwards. And he never did believe the verdict of suicide. The police as much as told us that at the time. How do I know he doesn't think one of us killed the boy?
Oh, that's absurd.
All right. But anybody who's crazy enough to divide up a wad of dough between four perfect strangers is crazy enough to think a perfect stranger killed his son.
Oh, why, that...
Maybe he thinks we all did it. Maybe he's wacky and has some crazy idea about revenge and is going to use the dough as bait to get us all together.
I hadn't thought of it like that. Perhaps you ought not to go.
I already said I would. Why, anyway, maybe it's on the level.
Stephen, do you still have that gun you used to have when you worked at the bank?
Yeah, I have it there.
I think you ought to take it with you Saturday night.
Honey, I think you've got something there. I think that's a very good idea.
And so, gentlemen, I'm quite gratified that you all saw fit to accept my rather unique invitation, and that we are all here together this evening. By the way, Mr. Mackenzie, I'm afraid I must ask you to give me that gun that you brought along.
So that's it.
And, Mr. Mackenzie, you will notice that one of my servants who is standing in the door directly behind you has got you covered, is the phrase, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
How did you know?
Why, the butler sort of patted all your pockets when you removed your coats, but aside from that, I've spent most of my waking hours during the past year looking into the backgrounds of all you gentlemen.
So I was right about this setup after all.
Now, look here, Mr. Hardecker. I came here tonight in perfectly good faith. I even canceled a very important business appointment.
With Mr. Joseph Donahue of Celluloid Products.
Yeah.
All right, let's cut out the mystery. What's this all about?
Yes,
Really,
what's
Mr.
the
Hardecker,
idea?
Now, wait a minute. One moment, gentlemen, one moment.
But
I didn't ask you up here under false pretenses. I fully intend to divide my son's estate precisely as I suggested over the phone. I sincerely hope you don't resent my investigation of your backgrounds.
Well, gee, Mr. Hardecker, my background isn't much, I guess, but...
Perhaps we all owe you an apology, Mr. Hardecker, but you must admit the whole thing's been a little strange.
It has indeed been very strange. I think, however, that phase of the matter is about over. Now, before we get down to business, there is one detail that I'd like you to help clear me up.
Sure, we'll be glad.
Shall I bring it in now, sir?
If you please. Is it well mixed?
Yes, sir.
In the center of the table. Thank you, Johnson. Now, please see that we are not disturbed on any account whatsoever.
Yes, sir.
Say, that looks good. What is it?
Oh, it's got quite a number of things in it. White of egg, mustard, milk.
It sounds like an antidote for poison.
It is an antidote for poison.
A what?
Gentlemen, there is a murderer in this room.
But
One of you killed my son and hasn't paid for it yet.
Oh, don't be a fool. The coroner's verdict was suicide.
This
The police...
is not a discussion, Mr. Mackenzie. This is an execution.
I'm getting out of here.
There is a man with a gun outside each door. You'll find them very unreceptive to that idea, Mr. Prendergast.
Sit down. He's got us.
Well,
The only thing we can do is try to talk a little sense into
I'm
it.
not open to arguments, Mr. Mackenzie. One of you killed my son. I know who that man is. It's taken me a year to find out, but I now know. The food that man ate tonight was poison.
Yeah, no, but
In
Poison?
10 minutes, he'll drop dead.
You can't take the law into your own hands that way.
Unfortunately, the law demands a very specific type of evidence. The police, whom I consulted repeatedly, do not believe it possible to get a conviction on the evidence I have. And therefore, the conviction must come tonight.
well, you wouldn't dare. You couldn't kill a man in cold blood that way.
There is an alternative, Mr. Prendergast. It is there in the center of the table. The antidote.
Oh.
The murderer may either confess his crime by drinking the contents of that bowl, or he may keep silent and go to his death here tonight. Privately executed for what cannot be publicly proved.
But they could send you to the chair for that.
I am quite aware of that contingency, Mr. Crenshaw, and quite willing to accept the consequences. But the murderer will have gone to his death before me.
But how do we know you poisoned the right...
The murderer knows, Mr. Prendergast. The rest need have no fear.
Hey, I think the guy's crazy. Maybe he poisoned all of us.
Look, Mr. Hardiker, this whole thing is insane. Nobody killed your son.
As to that, we shall shortly see, Mr. Mackenzie. The man who killed my son has approximately 7 minutes to live.
7 minutes. It's me.
I know it's me he's poisoned. My whole insides are on fire. It's me he's
Don't
poisoned.
fall for it unless you're sure. The whole thing may be a gag.
I assure you, nothing has ever been more serious, Mr. Mackenzie.
I don't feel so good myself.
Neither do I. Probably just indigestion. After dinner story like this is enough to give indigestion to a horse.
No kidding. Hey, supposing this guy's a maniac. Suppose he just made it all up in his own head and poisoned all of us.
Listen, Mr. Hardiger. Let me just tell you this. If I come out of this alive, I'm going to beat your brains out of it. It's the last thing I do.
I can't stand it.
Mr. Heidecker, I didn't do it. I swear I didn't. I didn't do it.
Shut up.
5 more minutes.
Hey, I feel awful. Maybe we all ought to take some of that stuff, just in case.
Yeah, that's it. We'll all take it.
Yeah. Who'll take it first?
Unfortunately, gentlemen, there's only enough antidote for one.
Even if you're right, Hardiger, this is no way to do.
This is my way.
You're crazy, I tell you, crazy.
Perhaps. Have you a son?
Kenshaw.
Will it save me?
Well, gentlemen, now you know.
All right. All right, what do I care? I killed him. And I do it again. I hated him all my life. In school, in college, he never even knew that I existed. He was too good for someone like me. And he had everything. Money, everything. Then he married the girl that I loved. She didn't know how I felt. I never told her. And then she died. Pneumonia, they said. She wouldn't have died if she hadn't married him. So I killed him. I saw him get into the elevator. And then it fell. It fell. It was as though God had delivered it into my hands. It came to me there in the dark. I choked him. I choked him, and then he got out his gun, and I put my hand over his, and I turned it against him and fired. But I'm glad. I'm glad.
Look. Help him, somebody. Help him.
Here, hold up his head.
Yeah. Never mind. He's dead.
It didn't work in time.
You killed him, Hardiker.
No, I didn't.
I tell you, he's dead.
Yes, I know. But what he drank was not the antidote. It was the poison.
The poison?
You see, I didn't exactly know which of you killed my son. I only knew that one of you must have. And so Robert Kenshaw convicted himself in front of all of you and was his own executioner.
Well, then, he was never poisoned at all until...
Until he drank the contents of that bowl.
Gee.
I shall divide the estate, gentlemen, as I promised. Meanwhile, you may call the police if you like. Let the law and divine providence decide whether this man died by my hand or by the guilt that lay upon his own soul.
And so closes After Dinner Story by Cornell Woolrich, starring Otto Kruger. Tonight's tale of Suspense. This is the Man in Black, who conveys to you Columbia's invitation to spend this half hour in suspense with us again next week, same time, when our star will be Gene Lockhart in the suspense play called Statement of Employee Henry Wilson. The producer of Suspense is William Spear, who tonight also directed the broadcast, and who with Lud Gluskin and Lucian Morawick, conductor and composer, and Robert L. Richards, the radio author, collaborated on tonight's Suspense.
Make a note on your calendar.
that beginning December 2nd, Suspense will come to you on Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Wartime, 7 p.m. Central Wartime, and 6 p.m. Mountain Wartime. Remember, Suspense will be heard on Thursday nights beginning December 2nd. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Suspense. This is the Man in Black, here again to introduce Columbia's program, Suspense. With us in Hollywood tonight as star is Mr. Gene Lockhart, whose remarkable characterizations on the screen have won him a notable following with American audiences. It is with rueful satisfaction, but with satisfaction nonetheless, that the genial Mr. Lockhart contemplates his reputation. Because of his cinematic misdoings, his numberless treacheries, betrayals, and cowardly villainies, he is one of the most hated men in the country today. Our story this evening by John Shaw is called Statement of Employee Henry Wilson. And so with the performance of Gene Lockhart, as he relates and relives the events of the climactic moment in Henry Wilson's life, we again hope to keep you in suspense.
I was aware that I was trembling. I tried walking slowly back and forth in front of the desk, but even in motion, my knees felt weak and my whole body shook. Why was it always I who trembled and never this pompous insect sitting in front of me? His voice was cool and mocking. His voice was clear and hard.
Well, I sympathize with you, of course, Wilson. But the error must be brought to Mr. Larkin's attention. It is quite a big mistake, sir. Quite a costly mistake. Mr. Larkin must know.
He wouldn't cover it up. I knew that. 2 years ago, this man had come with the firm. For 8 years before that, I had worked there, enjoying the work, liking the people. And then he had come there. Have you ever stood quietly by and watched someone rob your house and steal your pocketbook? I was helpless. He was ambitious. He was clever. He was fluent. And as of tonight, I was his subordinate. 2 years against 10 years. Around the office, I had a reputation of being casual and carefree. But I hated this man. Every inch of me hated this man. And it was not a new hatred.
Of course, there was no question of your honesty.
His voice was patronizing. The patient teacher and the unruly pupil. I hated him. He smiled up at me and waved his hand in dismissal. He almost brushed a small iron vase off the top of the desk with the gesture. I had seen that vase so often, but I had never seen it out of the eyes that I was looking at it with now.
Good night, Wilson.
Good night, I said. Good night, clever boy. I walked out into the corridor and rang for the elevator.
Terrible night, ain't it, Mr. Wilson?
I heard the boy
Yes, sir,
talking,
these elevators
like he was
are
yelling at me from some distant mountain.
I wish my
He was talking and I was answering, but what either of us was saying, I didn't know. I was thinking of something else. I looked at my watch as I stepped out of the car. It was 11:30 already. I mentioned it.
You had a long day today, Mr. Wilson.
Those were the first words of the boy that I heard clearly, very clearly. Yes, I told him.
Oh, plenty of overtime this week.
I stood and looked at him for a moment.
Mr. Dodds is still in the office. You might drop in and see if he wants anything. I think he'd be very grateful.
I will, sir. I certainly will. It'll help to pass the time, sir. I don't like to complain, but these nights pass awful slow sometimes.
Yes. Go up and see if he wants anything. Go up and see.
I walked out of the lobby and came back into the building again when the boy had gotten into the elevator.
soft lights up. I took the stairs slowly. I was in no rush. I must let the boy get out of the room first. He said the nights passed slowly. This one wouldn't, and yet there would be an eternity compressed in it. When I got to the 4th floor, I stood at the top of the stairs and watched the door to Dodd's office. The elevator was parked at the floor, so I knew the boy was in the room. A short while later, he came out, and I crouched back in the shadows until he'd gone down in the car. And then I walked into the room, not in a crouch or moving my feet so that no sound would wake the stillness, but casually, honestly. There was a small waiting room to Mr. Dodd's office. In 2 years, he had a waiting room. In 10, I had none. I felt like laughing at the symbolism of that fact.
Who's there?
I called out my name and entered his office.
Yes, what is it, Wilson?
He was still sitting down, and the iron vase was still alongside of him, very close to him. I started to talk. I don't know what about, business, things in general. I've quite forgotten. I reached across and picked up the iron vase casually, very casually. But his eyes went wild suddenly, and he jumped. And I hit him square on the top of the head with the vase. It wasn't a very good shot. I had no leverage. But he started to slump back in the chair. I hit him again, hard, and again, and again. And a red streak ran across his forehead, and he lay still. I put my hand against his heart. For a moment, there was a soft beating, and then I could feel nothing. I was very calm and very warm. I was calmer than I'd ever been before. I wiped off the vase and put it back onto the desk. I ran through the papers that Dodds had been looking at until I found the one paper I was looking for. I ripped it into little bits, and I put the pieces into my pocket. Outside the building, my first act would be to scatter the pieces. I'd cover my mistake myself. I moved slowly back to the door. I wiped the doorknob and looked once around the room before I opened the door and stepped out into the waiting room. And then...
Going home, Mr. Wilson?
I stood there, afraid to turn, afraid to think. I slammed the door shut behind me and stood in front of it.
Are you all right, Mr. Wilson?
I tried to talk, but the words got caught somewhere in my throat. It was the sweeper, Tom Higby, the night sweeper. I almost fainted. Everything had been set so nicely. I'd left the building. The elevator boy had come up and found Dodds in good health. Someone had stolen him later and killed him. That would be the elevator boy's story. If suspicion attached to anyone, it would be the boy. I had left the building. But now, this.
Are you all right, Mr. Wilson?
I'm fine, Tom. A bit of a cold, that's all. A weakens one. How are the wife and kids?
Fine.
The shock was wearing off.
Mr. Dodds is in his room now, Tom, working very late tonight. You'd better, let his office go for this once.
Well, if you say so, Mr. Wilson. I could give it a quick brush, though, sir. I wouldn't disturb him none.
I stood firm in front of the door. For a moment, I wondered if he'd seen anything when I'd come out of the room. It was possible. He could have looked over my shoulder. No. No, he hadn't seen anything. He began to sweep the sitting room, and I stood and watched him. I couldn't let him get out of here. I'd go to the chair if he told me about being there. And I couldn't kill him, too. Oh, what a quick step it had been back to normal. I was nervous again, and I felt a sickness at the bottom of my stomach. I tried to talk, and I sounded stupid. Tom looked at me. I wouldn't have to touch him. It would be his word against mine, and I had left the building. I opened the door quickly and went back into Dodd's office. I tried to keep my eyes away from that thing at the desk. I remember that he kept a bottle in one of the doors, and I took it and brought it out to the sitting room with me.
Oh, Tom, Mr. Dodds has a birthday tomorrow, and he wonders if you'll drink his health with me.
Well, I don't think you better take any tonight.
Mr. Dodds has a birthday. Sometime tomorrow he'll be a day old in the next world. Tom was famous for his liquor habits, but he hesitated.
Well, now...
I poured the drinks.
I don't think you better have...
Up with it, Tom, and down with it. And here's to Mr. Dodds.
Well, all right, here's kind of...
He drank one. He drank another. He drank a third. And still I poured them into him. He got talkative and grew very gay. But he didn't pass out. I looked at my watch. It was almost 12:30. 1 whole hour I'd wasted with him. I could stand no more. He was drunk. Any test would show that. His story tomorrow would be listed as a drunkard's babble. I had left the building an hour ago. I couldn't afford to waste any more time. I walked behind him, and he was laughing. And I hit him as hard as I could on the back of the neck. He pitched forward off the chair onto the floor. I dragged him into Dodd's office, and I lifted him into the chair facing Dodd's. I brought the bottle in from the sitting room and put it on the desk in front of Dodd's. I took the iron vase and curled Tom's hands around it for the fingerprint, and I dropped it at his feet. A bottle, a fight, a killing. I was sweating. I went out into the sitting room again and almost fell to my knees. I was frightened. I had to get out of here. I got to the lobby and looked out of the shadows of the elevator. The boy was sitting on a chair outside the car, and he seemed asleep. I came out of the darkness and went quickly towards the street and began to walk rapidly. I wanted to get somewhere out of the world. Oh, would I ever sleep again? we murderers are not supposed to, and I wanted to rest. I had a sudden idea. I went into a cafeteria and used the telephone. I called the building and got the elevator boy on the phone.
Hello there. Hello, Jim. Oh, this is Mr. Wilson, Jim. Has Mr. Dodds left yet?
The voice that answered me was sleepy, and the words were hard to make out. But I knew all the answers.
Well, listen closely, Jim. Will you tell him that the address of the place we were talking about is 144 Gray Street? Yes, yes, that's right. Oh, he'll know what I mean. Will you go up and tell him now, Jim? All right. Thanks a lot, Jim.
I was sure the sweeper would be discovered in the room with Dodds. The address was a Turkish bath. It's logical. A man working all night might want to go to a Turkish bath afterwards. Jim would walk in now, and heaven only knew what came next. The sweeper would be caught like a rat in a trap, drunk, and with a murdered man sitting across from him. I walked home through streets that crushed me in their shadows, between walls that whispered at me as I passed. I sat up in my room for hours listening to the sounds Manhattan makes in the night. And finally I fell asleep. And I sat, and I slept, and I dreamed until sunrise. I woke with a start. I was shaking like some miserable wet cur. I took a drink and tried breathing deeply. Somewhere I'd read that deep breathing killed that scared feeling. What in blazes was I frightened about? I was safe. I was completely safe. But when I left the house, I was still shaking. I walked all around the block that the building was on before I went inside. It looked like any other morning. On the floor where my office was, I saw a policeman. And then another. And then my world was surrounded by a ring of police and plainclothes men. I must watch my nerves. I must move carefully, very carefully. None of them paid any more attention to me than they did to any of the others. They assembled all of us in the president's office, and then one of them, a sharp, alert young man, began to talk.
Last night, an attempt was made on the life of one of your associates, Mr. Charles Dodds.
A murmur ran around the room. I was talking with the rest, being surprised with the rest. But what did he mean, an attempt? Dodds had been dead. Or had he?
Fortunately, however, the attack was not successful. And Mr. Dodds has supplied us with some rather unbelievable information. Information which
I tried to hold myself. I felt faint suddenly, and then something happened inside me, and I did not break. It was a trick. It was a trick, I was sure of it. The detective stared at us, running his eyes across our faces, across my face, searching, staring, and then he shrugged his shoulders.
Well, as a matter of fact, Mr. Dodds was killed. And another man you might know also died last night. Mr. Thomas Higbee, the night sweeper.
Higbee? Dead too? Again, that rustle of voices, that droning conversation that I was part of. Some of them had known Higbee, liked him. I hadn't meant to kill him. Could there be some mistake?
I wanted to ask one of these men, was there some mistake? I hadn't meant to kill him.
Mr. Dodds was clubbed to death. The night sweeper died of a heart attack. Nothing more is known as yet about what happened here last night. You must all consider yourselves at the disposal of the police. Till you're told otherwise. Now, if you...
Blast them. Why didn't they say something? They were lying to these people. Nothing more was known. That's nonsense. Why, it was all there for them to see. It told its own story. Higby had killed Dodds. Poor, harmless little Higby had killed that big, famous executive. And now...
Mr. Wilson, will you come this way, please? Just a little routine questioning, that's all. Everybody here will have to undergo it.
I must watch myself. I must go very slowly.
Sit here, won't you, Mr. Wilson? Now, do you remember what time you left the office last night?
What time? 11:30. Yes, it was 11:30. I remember mentioning it to the elevator boy.
Uh-huh. And what time did you get home?
Oh, somewhere about 12:30, I guess. Yes, just about that time.
Is there anybody who would swear to that?
Well, the elevator boy...
Well, I don't mean that. Is there anyone who saw you go into your house at 12:30?
I hardly think so. At that time, the streets aren't too well populated, you know, officer, and I live in a house where people mind their own business. I really don't know anybody in the house, and I doubt if anybody saw me go into it. But you can check with the elevator boy, though, as to my going home at 11:30.
Yes, we have already. You weren't on the best of terms with Dodds, were you, Wilson?
Oh, I was fond of him. But I don't know what right you have to say a thing like that.
He kind of did you out of a job around here, didn't he?
Oh, he was a smart man. Mr. Dodds was an exceptionally smart man. It was not at all a disgrace to lose a position to him. When I left him last night, he was in excellent health. If I killed a man every time I had a job taken away from me, I'd have quite a long line of victims behind me. Of course, I'm just joking, you know.
You made a phone call to him last night, didn't you?
Yes, to the elevator boy. I remember suggesting that he go to a Turkish bath after he'd finished work to sort of tone up. They're very good, you know. And I mentioned that I knew a very good one that I could recommend. And then when he asked me the name of it, I couldn't think of the address of the place, and I thought of it later, though, and I phoned the building.
Where'd you phone from?
From a little place in the neighborhood.
And about what time did you phone?
Well, it was about 12:25, I guess. I was getting a little mixed up. It couldn't have been then. I was still in the building at 12:30. They were confusing me.
You called at exactly 12:55. So you must have miscalculated the time of your arrival at home. However, that isn't important. None of us is expected to time ourselves from place to place, are we? When we find too good an alibi, we get kind of suspicious. Well, I don't think we'll have to bother you anymore, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. He asked me to send somebody in to see him as I went out. I forget who it was. I was thinking very hard. I went into my office and sat down. So easy. Was it possible the whole thing was over? And so easily?
Hello there, Wilson. Very sad, this business. Very sad.
Good morning, Mr. Larkin.
But we must go on. Mr. Dodds would want it that way.
Yes, sir, he would.
It's a responsible job he had, Wilson. But you've been with us long enough to know that.
Yes, sir.
Do you think you can handle it?
Well, sir, yes, sir, I think I can.
Good. Get your stuff together and take over Dodd's old office. You deserve this, Wilson. And I'm sure you'll reward our confidence in you.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Of course, I hardly expected...
On second thought, I think you'd better go into his office right away and sort of straighten out some of the things on his desk. I'll have one of the boys bring your things in later.
Very well, sir.
Good luck.
Thank you, sir. The fat, pompous pig. Why hadn't he said those things before last night? They were all in a spot now. They needed poor, stupid Wilson. They needed me to get them out of a hole. The further the thing went, the funnier it got. Books were wrong about virtue and good counting for anything. To get ahead, you either married the boss's daughter or killed the boss. I took the pencil and a small notebook and went out into the corridor. I stood for a moment outside Dodd's office, just like last night, and then I pushed the door open, slowly. The sitting room, and then the door to the office. I opened it and walked inside. I heard the door close softly behind me, and I stood there, smelling the death in the air. And then, I saw it. I tried to yell, but I couldn't get the words out. There in front of me, sitting in the chair where I'd dropped him last night, was Tom Higby, his eyes open, his expression blank and staring, and at his feet was the bottle and the vase, the same bottle, the same vase. Dodds was all that was missing. I turned and I bolted into the hall.
Higby. Well, what's the matter, Wilson? You look like you'd seen a ghost.
In the office. Higby.
Higby? Why, Higby's dead, man. What's the matter?
Mr. Larkin. Where's Mr. Larkin?
Why, here I am, Wilson. What's the matter?
In the office. In the office.
What? Why, nothing's the matter in here.
I walked in after him. There was nothing there. Nothing. No Higby. No bottle. No vase. But I saw them. Oh, was I going crazy? Was I beginning to go mad? I felt Larkin's pat on my shoulder. He murmured something about everybody being a little touchy, a little jumpy. And then he left. And I was alone in the room. Be careful. Be careful. Be careful. I stared at the desk and at the chair. No one was there. No one could have been there. I must watch myself. What?
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Oh, not at all.
I seem to be in the wrong room. I'm Mrs. Charles Dodds.
Oh.
I'm looking for that young detective. He doesn't seem to be out here.
Well, I believe he's in the end room questioning the employees.
And I don't suppose you'll be able to see me for a little while. Do you mind if I wait here for you?
Well,
Thank you so much.
Excuse me for a second. Charlie, will you tell the detective that Mrs. Dodds is waiting for him in my new office? You've already seated yourself. I was going to suggest that perhaps this seat might... She was sitting in his chair. There was blood in that chair.
This is quite all right, thank you. Charles would have liked to see the way everybody's taking his death. Everyone is so kind to me.
Mr. Dodds was a fine man. A fine man.
You're Mr. Wilson, aren't you? He used to talk about you. Thought you were a very bright person. He seemed very fond of you. I don't know how I'll be able to go on without him.
Mrs. Dodds, you mustn't. You mustn't.
I'm sorry. He wouldn't like to see me carrying on like this, would he? We were going to buy a home in Westchester this summer. Did he ever tell you that? Yes. Just outside Yonkers. We have two lovely little ones, Toby and little Mary. He loved the New York State countryside. We talked so much about it.
On she rambled. He liked this. He didn't like that. The children, Toby and little Mary. She was driving me crazy. Stop it, I wanted to yell. Get out of here and leave me in peace. Get out of here, you witch. Get out. Get out.
Mrs. Dodds, Detective Lewis would like to see you now.
Thank you for everything, Mr. Wilson. And goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye, and get out. And leave me alone. I hadn't meant to do anything like that. I hadn't wanted to do any of the things I was doing. All I wanted to do was to kill Dodds. All these other things, they weren't mine. I hadn't killed Higby. He can't haunt me. His wife can't cry at me. Heart attack. That's it. Higby died of a heart attack.
I beg your pardon, sir. Have you seen Mrs. Higby? The detectives are looking for her.
How would I see her? Am I everybody's guardian? How can anybody get lost in this office?
Sorry, sir. Mrs. Higby. Mrs. Higby.
Stop it, you fool.
Higby.
You howling idiot. Can't you be looked for quietly? You will drag Higby from his grave with your yelling.
2 widows.
What?
You manufacture widows, don't you, Mr. Wilson? Widows and orphans. Tell me, Mr. Wilson, is it your life's work or is it just a hobby with you? Tell me, Mr. Wilson.
Who is that? Who is that talking? Do they think they can make a fool of me? The office communication. It's all.
Oh, stop it, Mr. Wilson. You'll go balmy.
Oh.
You've committed the perfect crime. Don't go crazy and spoil it.
No.
Perfection is instinctive with you, isn't it?
Yes.
Not a plan that you make. Spontaneous perfection.
Yes.
There aren't many could do that.
Go on. Boy, go on. Voices can't frighten me. They deserve to die. And that's why they're dead.
Thou shalt not kill, Mr. Wilson. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not kill.
Not Higby. I didn't kill him. His heart stopped. You hear me, that's all? I didn't kill him. Now you voices stop. You hear me? Stop it, I command. Stop it.
Is something wrong, Mr. Wilson?
What do you mean, is there something wrong? Do you hear them, too? Well, you mustn't listen. They lie. Do you hear me? They lie. Now get out. Get out. Get out. You must talk only to me. You understand me? Only to me. Not to these others. Don't say anything to them. Only to me. Only to me. Well, what do you want?
Well, I don't know.
You think they'll say something bad about me, don't you? So you can carry me off to jail. That's what you're waiting for, isn't it? Well, you're going to be disappointed. You see? They're quiet.
What's quiet?
Yeah, who's quiet? You think I'm going to tell you. They won't say anything unless I tell them to, and I'm not going to tell them to say anything, not one little word. Last night you wanted to know all about last night. When you asked them, but they won't tell you.
Look at the expression on that face. Look at him, Lieutenant.
They were there. They saw me hit him, but they won't say anything. They were there, but they won't tell you a thing. Not one little word, not a single thing.
Gibbering idiot.
Because I'm not going to
I
listen.
shouldn't have let you
They won't
monkey
hear me.
around. We could have gotten it out of him some other way. You and your psychology. You know, you should leave that stuff in colleges.
All I did was plant Higby in the office and route Mrs. Dodson here and talked into the ventilating system.
Yeah, those voices had me creepy, too.
Incidentally, Dodds was single.
What?
That girl's my fiancée. She's an actress.
Well, why did you tell him Higby was dead? No, maybe you better not explain. Psychology, huh? Well, what are we going to do with the confession now? We should have pinched him the moment he walked in here.
Behave.
Maybe I'm lucky I never went to college.
There's no use you waiting here. They won't tell you anything. They're mine, all mine. I tell them what to say.
All right, get the wagon up
I'll say
here.
a word.
I'm not going to walk this thing through the streets.
I won't say a word.
Henry Wilson, it's the judgment of this court that you be sent to the Hillview Mental Home and be kept there in close confinement until such...
On the voice went. I had stopped listening to voices, all but the ones that I couldn't help hearing. But I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I tell people that, and they look at me queerly. The stupid fools. The guards here have spread the lies that I have fits. Lies. Lies, I tell you. They say every night when the moon comes up, I have fits. Loud, roaring fits. Well, they lie. Because it's then that I hear the voices. I hear Dodds and his wife and Toby and little Mary. And I sit quietly and I listen to them. Do you think I could have a fit in front of them? Do you now? No, I'd be ashamed. I tell you, I'm not crazy. And they lie when they tell you that. They lie, all of them. They lie. And they
And so closes Statement of Employee Henry Wilson, starring Gene Lockhart. Tonight's tale of Suspense. This is the Man in Black, who conveys to you Columbia's invitation to spend this half hour in suspense with us again next week, same time, when our two distinguished stars will be Margot and Philip Dorn. They will appear in a suspense play by John Dixon Carr entitled Cabin B-13. Producer and director of Suspense is William Spear, who with Lud Gluskin and Lucian Morowick, conductor and composer, and John Shaw, the author, collaborated on tonight's Suspense.
Suspense fans, please note that this program will shortly move to a different day of the week. Suspense will come to listeners in Eastern and Central time zones on Thursdays, beginning December 2nd, and to Mountain and Pacific time zone listeners on Mondays, beginning December the 6th. Now remember, Thursdays, beginning December the 2nd, in Eastern and Central time zones, and Mondays, beginning December 6th, in the Pacific and Mountain time zones for Suspense.
Suspense. This is the Man in Black, here to introduce Columbia's program, Suspense. In Hollywood this evening, our two distinguished stars are the lovely actress Margot and the polished young actor from Holland, Mr. Philip Dorn. A story by John Dixon Carr dealing with strange, very strange happenings aboard an ocean liner and called Cabin B-13 is tonight's tale of Suspense. If you have been with us before, you will know that Suspense is compounded of mystery and suspicion and dangerous adventure. In this series are tales calculated to intrigue you, to stir your nerves, to offer you a precarious situation, and then withhold the solution until the last possible moment. And so with Cabin B-13, and with the performances of Margot as Ann Brewster and Philip Dorn as Dr. Karl Heinrich, we again hope to keep you in suspense. Come now, in happier peacetime days, to a great ocean liner on the night of her departure for Europe. There she is at the West 22nd Street Pier, the 25,000-ton Moravania of the White Planet Line. Smoke from her three funnels coils up lazily in mild October air. You can see the decks, white and shiny like shoeboxes, and the string of lights along them, and the band standing by on A deck to play her out. You can hear the murmur of an excited crowd and the rattle of the steam winches as cargo is lowered into the hold. You can see the bustle of activity and the second officer standing at the head of the gangplank as two rather late passengers hurry through the customs shed towards that gangplank.
It's all right, Ricky. We are not too late.
No, and I thought we'd be in time.
A honeymoon in Europe. 3 whole months with nothing to worry about.
That's right, Dave. And you've been my wife for, let's see, practically 5 hours now.
I believe the correct phrase is it was so sudden, Mr. Brewster.
So sudden that we have to travel on our own passports instead of a husband and wife one. I hope they don't think you're not an honest woman.
I'm going to act like a complete wanton just to devil you. Oh, what about our tickets, Ricky? Do we give them to that officer standing at the top of the gangplank?
No, honey, you keep your ticket. The cabin steward will come around and collect it after we're underway.
And the money, Ricky?
It's a lot of money, Anne. $10,000 in cash. Maybe I better turn it in at the purser's office for safekeeping.
Yes, maybe you had. Wait a minute, Ricky.
What is it, then?
Wait. Do you mind if we stand here for a second before we go up the gangplank?
Oh, what's the matter? You're not ill, are you?
No, but getting over brain fever isn't any joke.
Oh, I know, dear.
You see, Ricky, I ought to be eager and excited like all those people up there, but suddenly you get fancies. Queer, sick fancies. Suddenly, right now, all I can think of is the night and the wind and all the black water in the dark.
And that's exactly the kind of morbid fancy I'm trying to cure you of.
I know, Ricky. I'll be good, but I was just thinking of a story.
What story?
Oh, never mind. It doesn't matter. Which way do we go?
Up the gangplank, through that door there, and then down on the elevator to B deck. And no more horrors, do you understand? Here we are, Ann. B deck and cabin number... Good Lord. B-13.
B-13.
You're not superstitious, are you?
Why, no, dear. Not about things like that. Open the door.
Here we are. Lights on and...
Oh, Ricky, darling. It's a beautiful cabin.
Best I could get. Well, they've got our luggage in anyway, and... Over there, madam, you'll find a basket of fruit and some books from your obedient servant.
Oh, you are nice to me. And I'm feeling so much better, Ricky. I will be all right, darling.
Of course you will. But you won't find any detective novels among those books.
Please, Ricky.
Detective novels may be all right for presidents and college professors, but they're straight poison to you. You'll read love stories and like it.
You know, Ricky, I keep thinking and thinking about that story I mentioned.
Oh, what story, dear?
It's an old one. You probably know it, but it was new to me. A woman and her daughter arrive in Paris and go to a hotel.
Oh, you mean the old Paris exposition story?
Yes, that's it. The daughter goes out. When she returns, her mother has disappeared. And even the hotel room isn't the same. The proprietor of the hotel swears the girl came there alone and that there never was a mother. The whole room is different when she goes back to look at it. The girl goes to the police, and they won't believe her, and she's nearly crazy. Of course, it turns out that the mother has caught bubonic plague and died, and they're hushing it up so that the visitors won't keep away from the city and ruin the whole exposition,
Anne,
but...
You've got to stop this kind of talk.
I know. But imagine being in a situation like that, with all those queer eyes staring at you, wondering if you'd lost your reason, wondering if your brain had cracked and the whole world might dissolve, and... Listen.
Well, that's the last call, Anne. We'll be underway any minute now.
You know, Ricky, I would like to see the skyline go past and the Statue of Liberty and the rest of it.
Oh, then why not go up and see it? I've got to deposit this money in the purser's office on C-Deck.
But I don't like you to leave me.
Oh, now look here, dear. You don't think I'm going to disappear, do you?
I suppose I don't really. When I get these ideas, and I can't help it, Ricky, I wish you'd wallop me.
Well, I'm not going to wallop you, Anne, but you've got to stop being afraid. You certainly won't disappear in a crowded ship with any number of people all around you. And as for me, I defy Houdini himself to make me vanish.
Don't talk like that.
I'm not going to vanish, and neither is this cabin, dear. Now, run along. I'll join you on deck as soon as I can.
All right, Ricky. I'll be good.
In with your gangplank! In with your gangplank! Gangplank, please, sir. Close the rails. Stand by.
Eager people, excited people, happy people, all crowding up to the rail to wave goodbye. Nothing to worry about, nothing on their minds except...
Except what?
Oh.
Except seasickness, madam?
Oh.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I hadn't meant to startle you, believe me.
Please don't mention it. How silly of me. It was my fault. I haven't been very well.
I noticed it, madam, if you'll forgive me. That was why I spoke to you. As you see by my uniform, I'm the ship's doctor.
This is a British ship, isn't it? But you don't sound British.
No, I'm an Austrian, madam. Dr. Paul Heinrich, at your service. I'm not very popular in my own country today. The days of colored shirts and vacant minds.
I'm Mrs. Brewster, Doctor. Ann Brewster. When does the ship go?
In about a second, Mrs. Brewster. You will hear the whistle, then the band will strike up, all langs in, and then...
We're moving, aren't we?
Yes. Oh. Don't you feel the vibration of the engines?
Oh, dear, I'll see you at Christmas. Oh, the key to the car is in the living room table drawer. Yes, dear, of course I'll behave myself in Paris. Say, what time does the bar open aboard this time, huh?
I imagine this is not your first crossing, madam.
Oh, I'm afraid it is, Dr. Heinrich. My husband's crossed many times, he tells me, but not on this ship.
Well, then I hope you're a good sailor.
Why, Dr. Heinrich?
Well, because we'll run into some very dirty weather once we are out at sea. October is a very bad month for traveling.
Well, if I do get seasick, Doctor, I'll rush straight to you, and I'll expect to be cured.
Let me tell you a secret, madam. There are two common ailments for which medical science has no cure. One is ordinary seasickness, and the other is hangover. Tomorrow morning I shall be dealing with both.
And enjoying it?
Oh, no. Sympathizing with it. That's all I can do. How do you like the Mauravania?
Oh, it's a magnificent ship from what I've seen of it. And you know they've given us a very nice cabin down on B deck, B-13. What's the matter? Why are you looking at me like that?
I beg your pardon. Did you say B-13?
Yes. Why not?
You're quite sure of that, madam?
Why, yes, of course I'm sure of it. I saw the number on the door. Why not?
Well, because
Go on, Dr. Heinrich.
Because there's no such cabin aboard a ship. I'm not joking, Mrs. Brewster. You see, some people are superstitious. Many ships, like this one, omit number 13 on each deck. You must have been mistaken.
What are you trying to tell me? Do you think I saw something that wasn't there?
No, Mrs. Brewster, not at all.
Then come along with me. I'll show you. I'll prove to you that there is a number 13. Will you come along?
Yes, Mrs. Brewster? I think perhaps I had better escort you.
Stewardess.
Yes, miss. Yes, ma'am. Come in straight away.
Tell me, stewardess, this is B-deck, isn't it?
B-deck, ma'am? Oh, yes, ma'am. No doubt about that.
Dr. Heinrich and I have been all over this part of the ship looking for cabin number 13, but we don't...
I've been trying to convince this lady stewardess that there's no such cabin number 13 on this ship.
Why, there sure to heaven isn't, ma'am. And never has been. I've served aboard the Mauravania a matter of 8 years, and I ought to know.
But I tell you, I saw it. I was in there. It was a big cabin with a private bathroom attached. The walls were paneled in light oak, and the furniture was rosewood and yellow satin, and the portholes were like real windows.
No, that's not much good, ma'am.
No, I'm afraid not. Most of the cabins hereabouts look like that. May I ask you, what name was the cabin booked in?
Brewster, naturally. Mr. and Mrs. Richard E. Brewster.
Here, let's have a look on my list. No, there's no Brewster here, ma'am.
I tell you, I was in there. They even delivered the luggage. I saw it.
Excuse me, ma'am, but I had a look-see in all the cabins I'm in charge of, just to see if the passengers wanted anything. And I don't remember any luggage with a Brewster label on it.
Wait a minute. There may be a partial explanation of this.
You see, that's better, Mrs. Brewster. I was hoping you might find one.
Ricky, that's my husband. Ricky and I have only been married a very short time, and when my maid printed the baggage labels, she must have made them out in my maiden name. I never noticed at the time.
Oh, what name might that be, ma'am?
Thornton. Anne-Marie Thornton.
Oh, Lord, miss. Now, why couldn't you have said that before? I remember it well. 2 silk cases and a little trunk. They're in B-16 now.
Where's B-16?
Right behind you, miss. You're standing practically in front of the door.
Oh, thank goodness. Oh, yes, but, what about my husband's luggage?
There's no gentleman's luggage in that cabin, miss. Your husband's or any other gentleman's, if you know what I mean.
I won't stand for this. Where's Ricky? What have you done with Ricky?
Please, Mrs. Brewster. There's one easy way to settle this.
Settle it? How?
Just look down the corridor. You notice the man coming towards us? The man with the 2 gold stripes around his sleeve?
Well?
That's Mr. Marshall, our second officer. Did you ever see him before?
Yes. Yes, of course I have. He was standing at the top of the gangplank when Rick and I got aboard.
Exactly. So he might be able to tell us something.
Oh.
Mr. Marshall? Mr. Marshall?
Yes, Doctor, what's up?
Would you mind coming here for a moment?
Well, not at all, old boy. Always glad to oblige a chap who may have to cut me up at any moment. What may I do for you?
Take a good look at this young lady. And tell me, have you seen her before?
Seen her before? My dear chap, if I had overlooked, the young lady will pardon me, I know, a passenger as charming as this lady is, I would be less of the gentleman than I fancy myself.
You saw her coming aboard tonight?
Oh, yes, certainly.
And, of course, you saw the gentleman who was with her.
The gentleman who was with her?
Yes.
Oh, but there was nobody with her, old boy.
You're quite certain of that, Mr. Marshall?
Oh, my dear doctor, she was the last of them to come aboard. I'll take my Bible oath there was no other passenger with her, or ahead of her, or behind her, if it comes to that.
You're lying to me.
Please, Mrs. Brewster, lower your voice.
I know what it is. It's the old Paris trick, like in the story. But you won't get away with it, do you hear?
Now, look here, madam.
I'll go to the purser, I'll go to the captain. Oh, dear Father in heaven, won't anybody believe me?
Later that night, in the captain's room just abaft the bridge, there is a conference of ship's officers. Outside, stung by spray, clinging to the bulkhead rail in the dark, a frightened girl waits until the door of the cabin's room opens.
Will you bring the young lady in, Dr. Heinrich? Close the door.
Yes, sir. Here we are.
This is Captain Wainwright. Now, just tell your story straightforwardly, and please don't excite yourself.
Well, maybe we can get some decision into this matter. Will you sit down here beside my desk, Miss Thornton?
My name is Brewster, Captain. Mrs. Ann Brewster.
Whatever you say, Mrs. Brewster.
Thank you very much, Captain.
I might tell you, ma'am, I've got a lot on my mind already. The first officer comes aboard with an attack of flu. I'm facing an equinoctial gale short-handed. And now this has to happen on top of it.
I'm terribly sorry I can't help that, Captain. But I want to know what they've done with Ricky.
Just one moment, please, while I get this straight. By this time, I understand, you yourself have personally interviewed practically every single passenger aboard this ship. Is that true?
Yes, it's true.
But your alleged husband is not here. Is that true?
Yes, that's true,
In
but
the meantime, the purser has sent a squad of men to search this ship. They've searched every inch of it. You can take my word for that. There's nobody hidden. Your husband's not here. According to Mr. Marshall, who's standing over there...
I see him.
According to Mr. Marshall, he never was here.
Oh, hang it all, Miss Thornton. You needn't glare at me like that. We couldn't see the chap. He wasn't there, now could we?
Be quiet, Mr. Marshall.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, I'm not unreasonable, Mrs. Brewster. I think you'll admit that. But what can I do? What can I say? Can you offer any proof, even, that this husband of yours ever existed?
Proof? Yes, of course I can.
Excuse me for interrupting, but would you mind, Captain, if I ask a question or two?
No, Doctor, go ahead. I tell you, I'm going daft myself.
If you were married, Mrs. Brewster, you must be carrying a joint husband and wife passport. Where is that?
Well, there wasn't time to get one. We each carried our own passport.
Oh, I see. But still, there must be someone back in America who can confirm what you say if you got in touch by radio telephone. Your parents, for instance.
I haven't got any parents. They're dead.
What about relatives, then, or a guardian?
My guardian is a trust company. The administrators don't even know I'm married.
But somebody must have performed the ceremony of marriage. The parson, the justice of peace.
Yes, of course. But... Oh, I can't remember the name of the town.
You don't remember the name of the town?
Hold tight to your chair, Mrs. Brewster. The ship is going to pitch again.
How's the glass looking, Mr. Marshall?
Barometer's rising, sir. This weather won't hold long. We shall be in the fog before morning, huh?
They're in a fog now, if you ask me. This lady says she...
I'm terribly sorry, but I'm trying to think of it. It was a little town in upstate New York where they can marry you at a moment's notice. Ricky kept the certificate. I was confused. I haven't been well.
No, you haven't.
You see, Ricky had been away, and he came back, and I was in love with him, and he sort of swept me off my feet, and... Oh, what's the use?
Not much use, apparently.
If you'll take my advice, ma'am, you'll go below to your cabin and get some sleep. I'll send the doctor down to mix you a sedative.
You think I'm crazy, don't you?
I think you're a little overwrought, ma'am.
What I can't understand is why. Why should you want to do this? It can't be the bubonic plague this time.
Bubonic plague, ma'am? Who said anything about the bubonic plague?
Never mind. But I'll show you. You're all against me, except maybe the doctor. But I'll show you. I'll prove it to you. I am going downstairs, and I don't want anybody to follow me. Good night. Good night, all of you.
Well, I'm glad that's over.
Look here, Mr. Marshall.
Huh?
You think it's quite safe to trust her out there alone?
Well, I don't know, sir. She's mad as a hatter, if you ask me.
You think she might do something foolish?
Well, I think she might chuck herself overboard if we're not careful.
What's your opinion, Doctor?
I can give you my opinion, gentlemen, in a very few words. That girl is as sane as you are.
What's that?
Wait and hear what I have to say. I shared your own belief at first, but I've been talking to her all evening. I've heard her whole story, and there's not a psychopathic trait in her nature. She firmly believes in this husband.
Yes, Doctor. A lot of people firmly believe they're Napoleon, but they get tossed into loony bins, that's the same.
This matter is not a joke, Mr. Marshall. I tell you, this man exists. Or did exist.
What do you mean, Doctor?
I suppose he has been murdered. Perhaps he has been murdered and thrown overboard.
Murdered? Thrown overboard?
If you remember, Richard Brewster was carrying a very large sum of money in cash. His wife's wedding gifts. Practically all her inheritance.
He meant to go to the purser's office, but he never got there. That money might have been a great temptation.
To whom?
To a stewardess, perhaps, or even to a ship's officer.
Just exactly what are you getting at?
Well, numbers on doors can be changed easily enough. Just print a small card and put it on the metal slot on the door.
I still want to know what you're driving at.
If you use your intelligence, gentlemen, I think you will understand how a man can be made to vanish into thin air. And why Mr. Marshall saw never another passenger. You still don't see it?
No, I do not.
Well, then listen, and I'll explain exactly how it was made like
this. 4 o'clock in the morning. 4 o'clock, the hour of suicides and bad dreams. The gale has subsided, the sea is calm. The SS Mauravania creeps blindly at barely 8 knots through a thick and strangling fog. The whole ship is dark and sealed up in sleep. There's no sound in all that mournful dimness, except when the foghorn cries out a warning overhead. Even cabin B-13 is dark, and Brewster, still fully dressed, lies restlessly across one of the berths, the head almost touching the intercabin telephone.
What was... Oh, I thought I heard... Telephone. Yes? Hello?
It's me, Anne. Take it easy now.
Ricky! Ricky, where are you?
Quiet. Keep your voice down.
Where are you, Ricky? What happened to you? Are you hurt?
No, I'm not hurt, but he nearly got me.
Who nearly got you?
Listen, dear. I can't explain over the phone, and I don't dare go down there. Can you meet me up on deck?
Yes, of course. Where?
Do you know the boat deck?
Boat deck? Which one is that?
The top deck, where all the lifeboats are slung.
Oh, yes, I know it.
Well, go to the starboard side.
Yes?
That's the right-hand side, facing forward. Find the 4th lifeboat from the aft companionway.
Yes.
There's a thick fog, and nobody will see us.
Ricky. What is it? Ricky! He's gone. He's gone.
Excuse me, miss, but I thought I heard somebody talking in here.
Stewardess, what are you doing up at this time of the night?
If I might ask, miss, what are you doing up and dressed? Oh, you ought to get some sleep, miss. You really ought.
It might interest you to know, stewardess, that I've just been talking to my husband.
Now, look here, miss. Don't start that all over again. Please don't start that all over again.
You all pretended to think I was mad, didn't you? And you nearly drove me mad. Ricky's beaten the whole crowd of you, and I'm going out on deck to meet him now.
Out on deck, miss.
That's what I said. Where's my coat?
Don't go out there, miss. Not in the state of mind you're in. And the fog's so thick, you can't hardly see your hand in front of your face.
Stand away from the door, please.
Suppose, miss, I didn't want to let you go out there.
I don't think that would matter much. You've probably heard that mad people have 10 times ordinary strength, and I'm stronger than you anyway.
Miss, I'm a begging you.
Stand away from that door. One, two, third.
Anne, is that you?
Yes. Ricky. Ricky, darling, where are you?
Here, duck your head under the lifeboat. You take my hand.
But isn't it horribly dangerous out there on the edge? There's no railing along the side of the ship.
Don't worry, Anne. I won't let you fall. Look out! Oh, went overboard here. We're well aft near the propellers. The suction would carry into the propeller blades. And listen.
I can't hear anything except the foghorn.
Yeah, but I can. There's somebody walking along the deck. And I can see a flashlight moving in the fog. You're quite right, my friend. You can see a flashlight moving in the fog.
Dr. Heinrich, what are you doing here?
At the moment, young lady, I'm covering both of you with a revolver. Please don't move.
So, you were in the conspiracy, Dr. Heinrich.
May I ask you what conspiracy?
The whole ship's conspiracy to say Richard Brewster didn't exist.
My dear young lady, you can set your mind at rest. There never was any ship's conspiracy against you. The people you spoke to were perfectly honest.
Including Mr. Marshall, I suppose.
Yes, including Mr. Marshall.
And what is this all
Stand
about?
back there.
I suppose he was telling the truth when he said nobody came up the gangplank before or after me.
I beg your pardon. That was not what he said. He said no passenger came up the gangplank at this time.
Well, what's the difference?
A great crime is arranged for tonight, young lady. No less a crime than murder.
Murder? Who's going to be murdered?
You are.
What?
That, I repeat, is a scheme. But there is no conspiracy and only one criminal.
Oh. And who is the criminal?
The criminal is the man standing beside you. Your so-called husband.
Ricky? You don't know what you're saying.
I think I do. Marshall, of course, did see someone walk up the gangplank, loitering behind you. But he never dreamt of associating the person in any way with you. He saw a ship's officer returning from shore leave in civilian clothes.
A ship's officer?
Yes. The man you call your husband, his name isn't Richard Brewster. His real name is Blaney. And he's the first officer of the Mauravania.
Are you trying to tell me
the captain
that
can identify him. He's actually British, though he can fake an American accent very well. He has already got a wife in England, and he is planning to join her with the $10,000 he got from you.
I don't believe it. I don't. Ricky, why don't you say something?
Oh, he planned it very cleverly, I must admit. He never let you know he was ship's officer, did he? He's been away for some time, naturally, so he persuaded you to marry him in a hurry.
Ricky, is this true?
He has the money, you see. All he did was hang a dummy number on the cabin door, remove it later, put on his uniform, and walk away with his own luggage.
But Captain Wainwright told us that the first officer had come aboard tonight with...
With a bad attack of flu, yes. Our friend couldn't be seen in public until after he disposed of you. The best thing was to convince everybody you were insane, as he did. Then, when you went overboard tonight...
They would all believe it was suicide.
Exactly. But I began to suspect this Brewster because you quoted him as telling such an obvious lie. He said he had never traveled in the Mauravania, yet he could direct you all over the ship and even knew where the purser's office was. So I went to his cabin, found it empty, searched, and found your $10,000.
Look out!
Put it down, you fool! Put it down!
Oh! He's overboard! You shot him! You shot him!
Those shots, my dear, never touched him.
Never touched him?
No. The weight of the iron carried him over backwards when he lifted it. It was the weight he was going to use to sink your body.
Ricky! The propellers! The ship's propellers!
Yes, they suck you under.
Oh, Doctor. Doctor, I can't stand it.
It won't be easy, my dear. It won't be easy, I know, but... Believe me, this way is better.
And so closes Cabin B-13, starring Margot and Philip Dorn. Tonight's tale of Suspense. With our two stars tonight were Dennis Hoy as Captain Wainwright and William Johnstone as Ricky Brewster. This is the Man in Black who conveys to you Columbia's invitation to spend this half hour in suspense with us again next week, same time, when our star will be one of the screen year's most sensational newcomers, Mr. Gene Kelly. Mr. Kelly will be supported by Hans Conried and William Johnstone. The producer and director of Suspense is William Spear, who with Lud Gluskin and Lucian Morawick, conductor and composer, and John Dixon Carr, the author, collaborated on tonight's Suspense.
Suspense fans, please note that these programs will shortly move to different days of the week. Suspense will come to listeners in Eastern and Central time zones on Thursdays, beginning December the 2nd, and to Mountain and Pacific time zone listeners on Monday, beginning December the 6th. Remember, Thursday, beginning December the 2nd in Eastern and Central time zone, and Mondays, beginning December the 6th in the Pacific and Mountain time zones for Suspense. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.